makes this? I don't know. It's me. It's Amid the Ruins. It's a guy who makes dire wave music. It's Amid the Ruins. Dire wave music. What I've talked about in probably 100 articles at Jay's Analysis is the implementation of the AI smart grid and the giant smart cities, which is what IBM talks about publicly building. And that's where we're going, and that's what I think we have to be really concerned about. So all of these tensions, they are part of a long-term strategy to basically get everybody moved into mega cities. They'll be forced off of land and so forth for environmental reasons, and basically concocted and invented environmental nonsense. Then you'll be stuck in some hellhole mega city in a, basically a carton-sized apartment living over a Target or something, or inside of a Target or a Walmart, as I said several years ago. It's actually coming true now. There's actually Target cities. This is all part of the long-term globalist strategy. So, but to get there, you've got to have the constant clash, the constant alchemical blending and mixing and smashing together right out of Manichaeanism to produce the convergence, to produce the synthesis. And that's what's crucial in all this, and what is absolutely true from an alchemical, esoteric, philosophical, and geopolitical perspective, the fact that the ruling elite seek to be post-human. jaysanalysis.com.
Sunday night, we ought to get a decent crowd. I don't know. I would imagine this whole crowd is probably one of these two. What's up, y'all? We got a hot mic talking nonsense in the background. All the biggest need to hit like right now. Welcome, everybody. And I apologize for my TV preacher hair. There's nothing I hate worse than getting a bad case of damn TV preacher hair.
I like it like that.
It's getting too puffy. Put your hand on the screen right now and pray to get rid of that bad case of gout that I know this audience has a bad case of gout that we're going to heal right now.
It has a nice curvature.
I don't like it.
I like it.
I mean, I like the kind of Vanilla Ice thing going, but
Do you remember when
I look like a fucking TV preacher, dude.
Do you remember when you shaved your things in your side of your head?
Yeah, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to get my lines back, y'all. All right, so I'm Jay Dyer, and this is Jay's Analysis, and this is my beautiful wife, Jamie. We're going to be talking about something a little unexpected. You probably thought, oh, here we go, another conspiracy movie analysis. You thought wrong. We are not going to be doing a conspiracy movie analysis. In fact, if you happen to catch my exclusive to Rockfin stream where I covered the basic principles of counterintelligence and analysis, then you're going to understand what we're doing today. I already see and saw comments, people not understanding what I was up to. They're not on the up and up. They're not on my wavelength, dog. Because if you saw that stream, about 3 hours, and it was very well received. Got a lot of really fat super chats on that, some nice tips. Much appreciated to everybody that tipped on the Counterintelligence and Disinformation stream. What we did was we covered what counterintelligence is. We covered some of the basic ideas and terms. We covered the principles, the patterns, the recognition that we're looking for. We covered the ideas of what a honey trap is, what a limited hangout is. We covered some of that stuff. And then we looked at examples, right? We deconstructed things like the Q crap and all that nonsense, which we always said was an obvious disinformation operation. We critiqued and we debunked earlier incarnations like it, like Nasara. And we found other parallels as well. Everybody's heard, I think, by now of Operation Trust. We looked at Anonymous. And we looked at how those functioned as, in some cases more, in other cases less sophisticated bait, right? You lay the bait, you hook people, then you lead them down a path. And so we talked about principles about how, I got a piece of ginger in my mouth. We talked about how to analyze and how to apply those techniques and principles for what we do. And how us, on our side, what we're doing is a kind of counterintelligence analysis, right? So not everybody does the same types of things that does these types of things. Some people are out there doing disinformation, and they do counterintelligence in the sense, or they do intelligence, they do espionage, they do disinformation operations, and then other people analyze and want to break it up and debunk it. So for our purposes, all of us, and for those who do apologetics, those who do analysis, we want to be right in our assessment. We want to have the proper principles and not be drawn in by fallacies. Because as we saw in that talk, misinformation, disinformation, a lot of times bad propaganda, black propaganda, gray propaganda, it will rely on fallacies. Very similar to the world of advertising, right? Where we're weaponizing fallacies to try to mislead and disinform people. And these are all basic principles that we went over last time, and then we deconstructed examples, some nefarious, malicious, some not so nefarious or malicious, some perhaps even positive, WikiLeaks, etc. Oh, sorry. I don't appreciate your feet. I'll squish your feet if I see them. If I see your foot, they're squished. And so that was a fun stream. Tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to take all those principles that we learned last time, and we're going to apply it to situations, to films that occurred to me as being preeminent examples of all of these principles of psyops, intelligence, surveillance, compromise, drama, right?
Yeah, debauchery.
Yeah. Using debauchery.
Yeah.
So tonight, the point of this talk, again, if you're here telling me that the movies are evil, we're not here to talk about how the movies are evil. This isn't a puritanical moral critique of the films, like it's been done a million times over. We're interested instead in how the characters either successfully or unsuccessfully fend off
the disinformation, the attacks, the game that they're playing. And this is actually going to tie into another series that we're going to do concurrent with this. The title of that series of film analysis will be Movies Like Eyes Wide Shut, but they're situations where the characters get caught up in something way bigger than themselves, right? We all know in Eyes Wide Shut, Bill Harford gets caught up in this, layered scenario of these, ever evolving conspiracies that lead to this kind of dark cult. Just one second, and then we've got a bunch of other films that have similar ideas, like The Game, The Magus with Michael Caine. It's The Game with Michael Caine. There's The Net with Sandra Bullock, which is kind of a cheeseball 90s movie, but it has this principle. And a lot of what you'll see in those films are going to mirror what we talk about tonight in these two films. So we're going to look at how successful the characters are in dealing with misinformation. We're going to do character studies on different characters. We're going to see their counterintelligence, how they do psyops in return, right, to counteract the narrative that the enemy puts out. So this is going to be a great test study. And if you think this is too outlandish or absurd, well, I'll have you know that when I was doing my research for my thesis on James Bond, it turns out that fiction has been used in the training of intelligence assets for a long time. Not just assets, but also analysts and so forth. In fact, the Egyptian intelligence used Ian Fleming's novels to learn some of their skill sets. And that's because, as we all know, Ian Fleming coded real intelligence operations into his Bond stories. What did you want to say?
I forgot.
So that's my whole ramble spiel.
I remember. If you guys can think of movies like that in the chat, if you can give some suggestions. The theme is just someone going along in everyday life and they get caught up, like, what's Enemy of the State?
Yeah, so Enemy of the State. Now, that's not this theme. This theme of psyop films where we're looking at character studies, that's different from the normal dude that gets caught up in stuff way over his head, right? North by Northwest,
that's
Vertigo, Enemy of the State, The Game, The Magus,
Eagle
The
Eye.
Net, Eagle Eye,
Yeah.
right, with old Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah.
But tonight, let's get into the first film, which is Cruel Intentions. Now, some people said, this movie taught everybody to have intimate sexual relations with their siblings. I don't think that's the point of this movie. I mean, the point of this movie is not that, because number one, it doesn't go well for either of those siblings, right? And we're going to see that there is a cautionary tale here. And I'm not telling you that you need to watch these movies. That's up to you. You're an adult. You can make a decision whether these are movies that are something you'd want to watch. They do have a couple sexual... I don't think either of these actually has any nudity, but they do have a couple, kind of innuendos and risque things that are present. That's your decision. I trust my audience is capable, mature adults that can figure out what they can and can't watch. So you can make that decision.
I thought for Cruel Intentions, if you're trying to understand the mindset of the elite or powerful people, the characters in this would be good for that, because it's these young people that are growing up to go into politics and big business and Wall Street.
Right. And we didn't do Dangerous Liaisons because it's totally boomer tier, and this is more interesting, right? So
we like the 90s.
This is 90s. I grew up in the 90s. So this is a lot more interesting to my generation than boomer Glenn Close movies or whatever.
That's funny.
So basically what we have here is we're going to be looking at, as I said, character study. We're going to look at how the characters are playing a kind of a chess game, how they're anticipating the opponent's moves, how they use the intelligence that they have to head off at the pass the opponent, right? How they will try to damage the image of the opponent. So again, all of this, if you think about it, obviously it's going to be very relevant to doing the kind of analysis that we do around here. And I know many of you follow me for this kind of analysis.
Mm-hmm. So you got Buffy and you got Ryan
Felipe,
our step siblings,
right? And
they're way too inappropriately.
Well, that's
right?
Let me mention a couple more things we want to look for, because this is instructions and analysis here tonight.
So we're going to be looking for anticipating the moves of the opponents, the enemy, motivations, weaknesses, soft spots in the characters, and the character development, the arc, what lessons are learned. We're going to be looking for the baits, the traps that are set. We're going to be looking for the confusion, the disinformation, the flustering that occurs in terms of the trickery of the enemy. We're going to be looking for game theory. We're going to be looking for choices. Rational choice theory is going to come into play here. And as we said, the lessons that are learned via the weak points, even in the strong characters. Because the good things about one of the good things about both these films is that both protagonist characters are going to have severe weak points, and they're going to have character development. So, like Jamie said, right, we've got two elite, very wealthy step siblings, and they have very inappropriate relations, right? Obviously, they're working together in this sort of narcissistic, psychopathic game to game everyone around them, and they're just completely nefarious. They're very totally malicious.
And where are the parents?
Yeah, a great point. Like, we never see the parents of either of these characters, right? They're just in this big, mansion in New York. Mm-hmm. And they're part of this network of, because they're young, they work with this private school, this elite prep school, and we never see the parents. So right out from the outset, we see a very, this reminds me of the section in Quigley where he talks about the elite basically raising their children to be psychopathic. Mm-hmm. And they'll traumatize them on purpose so that they're effective psychopathic leaders. And so this is kind of, I mean, I'm not trying to be a communist here, like everybody who's wealthy is somehow some sort of rapacious, vampire or something like that. That's absurd. But there is obviously something to this notion of creating psychopathy for people to be in these positions of power.
Mm-hmm. And they're way too old for their age, too. So they're playing adult games with adult themes.
With young people.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting...
I really don't think high school students would have this much deception in them. Do you?
That's true. I mean, it kind of looks like the Ryan Felipe character. Sebastian is maybe 19, 20. But remember, if you're 19, 20 and you're the children of billionaires, you've probably been raised to be very malicious and very, very intelligent. Maybe not, but maybe you have, right? Mm-hmm. Buffy, she looks, Catherine, she looks like she's about, 25 or 30. But I think they're supposed to be playing, early 20s age people. But one thing that comes up early on is that we get an insight into the character of Sebastian, Ryan Felipe's character, when he's at his therapist and he's talking to her, and we think that he's there to get therapy, but what he's actually doing is just like Tony Soprano and all the years that Tony's going to the therapist, right? He's learning manipulation tactics. And in fact, he manipulates the therapist and actually leaks the nudie photos of the therapist's daughter, which the whole thing was just him playing a mind game with the therapist, sort of one-upping. So we get an immediate window into the malicious nature of both the Ryan Felipe, Sebastian and Catherine.
So he just, in the beginning, sees people as playthings, just
mm-hmm.
like she does.
Right. They both do.
Yeah.
And they'll engage in this wager, this manipulation game. And this is a theme that will come up in the movies that we'll do about the characters caught up in things bigger than themselves, which is the God game, right? This is a big part of the Magus. It's a big part of the game, is what they're calling the God game, right? Which is the idea of the master manipulator, right? The person who's kind of in the background that's playing all the chess pieces in it and is so competent at intelligence that they're able to judge and figure out everybody's chess moves way ahead of time, right? Mm-hmm. And that's going to be the character who does that in this film is not going to be who you expect. And one thing that does make this an interesting film is that it keeps changing, like who you think the big, 66-degree chess player is not who you think it is.
Mm-hmm. So Catherine is pretending well, she plays people by religion too. They learn that all these things are a weakness: emotions, faith.
Well, they profile the people that they want to con.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's an element of con artistry here. And on the part of Catherine, she has figured out that this girl, Cecile is who she can manipulate and use, because she wants dirt on Cecile so that she can blackmail her and destroy the relationship that Cecile, this young naive girl, now has with Catherine's ex. So Catherine is butthurt. This guy has left her. She's such a narcissist that she can't stand any criticism or rejection. She's got to try to use the dirt that she can gain from manipulating Cecily, or Cecile, the Selma Blair character. And when the first thing she does is to try to get her under her influence. And she does that by appealing to her mom via the prep school, right? And she says basically, look, she pulls out her cross, and right.
Well, she's class president.
She's involved in bringing new prep students to the school.
Yeah. But
she portrays herself to the mom as a Christian. She says, oh yes, I always just pray to God when I'm having problems and I don't think things are going to go right. So she's found out, she's profiled her target, and she's appealing to and trying to sell herself, right, as the best type of, basically mentor for the young Selma Blair character. And it works, right? It buys their vibes. But we realize that when Sebastian shows up and Sebastian spills the beans about what he's up to, and then she takes her cross off, and it's actually a thing that holds her cocaine, right? So she's snorting coke from her cross. So we realize that this is an act. They're just putting this act on for people. And that's going to be a continuing theme, is public perception versus reality. Mm-hmm. That will be big in the next film as well, that public perception is really, from the vantage point of the analysis that we're doing, that's really what's key, because this is applicable to the fields that we're talking about, because public perception will determine your power, right? The power that you have in terms of business, media, whatever that you're engaged in. It's key to control or manage public perception. That's what media entities do. That's what PR firms do. That's what people that do political campaigns, they hire PR people to manage public perception. So for us, for our purposes, when we can recognize this and decode it and deconstruct it, we have a much better approach to the world. We're going to have a much better sane analysis and not get duped by disinformation or garbage, lies, deception, whatever.
So she gets herself put in charge of Selma Blair's public perception, right? Mm-hmm.
Right. So her job is to then sell the university, and she wants to take her under her wing, and then it becomes this kind of God game between the two sort of main manipulator characters, sibling brother, stepbrother and sister, and they wager between one another, right? And so the Sebastian character is you could see him as a kind of a raven. He's basically a sex operative who's able to seduce most women. He can easily get most women that he wants. But he's found a woman that he thinks is a big challenge, right? He says, I've had enough of these degenerate New York debutantes and these bourgeois girls. They're all the same. He says, I want a challenge. And he finds this girl who's a Christian chastity proponent, right? And she's the daughter of a very wealthy elite family, we presume.
The new headmaster of the school.
Yeah, we presume they're billionaires. I mean, they've got a giant estate. And it's Reese Witherspoon, right? So he says, I want that. I'm going to try to corrupt her. And that's my new challenge, is to try to, game her, be a player, etc. And then the Catherine character, the Sarah Michelle Gellar, she hears this and she realizes that now her interest is piqued because she's a little jealous, because she wanted to be the conquest that Sebastian could never have, right? Oh. And now she's bothered because this other girl is into the picture, right? And so she makes a wager. She says, if you can do that, if you get her before I get the dirt on Cecily, then I will let you sleep with me. But you have to also sleep with Cecily in order for me to destroy Cecily's relationship with my ex, right? As a revenge pact, right?
That's crazy.
So it is crazy, and it sounds kind of intricate, but there's a reason for all this intricacy.
And there is a fascinating character profile here. And we're also going to notice how religion plays into this as, from our vantage point, not as, we're not interested in whether it's true or false, but how it's used by people in the public domain for perception, for psychological operations, for giving an appearance, right? And this is a real thing that occurs in the world, right? So I'm not saying that religion isn't true or Christianity isn't true. I'm saying that from the vantage point of the type of analysis that we're doing, we're going to set that aside for the moment and look at how it's used by powerful people. And you'll see, right, we've done a lot of talks where we talked about how different churches, different religions have been co-opted by intelligence agencies, NGOs, think tanks, etc. And that's going to be relevant to what we're doing today.
Sarah Michelle Gellar's character is
Catherine.
very much like a spider weaving.
She's like a Black Widow. Yeah, she's weaving this intricate plot, and because they're rich, they don't have any needs. The thing that gives them enjoyment is playing this God game. Right, just like the Conchis character in the Magus, he doesn't need anything, right? So if you've got everything, then, besides fulfilling every, maybe degenerate fantasy that you have, what else is there but the game of manipulation, right? The game of nations, the grand chessboard, etc. But this is a micro scale of that. All right, so we're looking at the.
One of the weird things about this movie was
What?
the Selma Blair character was so over the top childish. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, she's just entering the prep school, so she could be a freshman.
Yeah,
she
this
could be 15,
very young, right? I mean,
years old.
this also can suggest PEDO type of stuff, right? So you have the elite involved in literal compromise operations, and that's one of the first things that we notice about the Ryan Felipe character Sebastian is that not only has he presumably blackmailed and compromised the therapist and the therapist's daughter via the leak. So he does this intentional leak of information to destroy the daughter of the nudie photos, right? And then there's an intentional compromising that he engages in with his friend, who's the Skittles drug dealer, right? And you know what I mean by Skittles. So what's interesting is that for the characters who are in this manipulation role, they're not interested in the good or the bad. They're not interested in the morals, and they will associate themselves. We'll see this with Easy A as well. They're going to associate themselves with morally compromised people on purpose for how they're useful. Mm-hmm. Okay, so people become tools, or they're only relevant for their use. It's not for the purpose of intelligence or the operatives or for espionage. It's a game of compromise. It's not a game of trying to figure out who the bad guys and the good guys are. Now, as Orthodox, obviously we can say, and we do believe, there are good and bad guys. But when we're doing the kind of analysis that we're doing, it's not so much about figuring out who the good guy or the bad guy was. It's trying to figure out the objective situation of the game that's being played and what techniques are being played in the game. That's what we want to do so that we don't fall into overly simplistic black and white views of the world, right? Where we think, oh, well, if so-and-so did this, then the other guy must be the bad guy, right? Or the good guy.
Sometimes
you can have a bunch of bad guys.
guys.
You can have 10 bad guys. You can have 50. So it doesn't, that's an overly, but much of disinformation, much of psychological warfare, as I'm sure everybody knows, it does oftentimes just function on basic dialectics, right? Oh, my team, me team bad guy, you team good guy, this kind of stuff. And of course the world is not that simplistic, which is not to say that there aren't at times good and bad guys. There are. So remember, right away we noticed that the Ryan Felipe character has shown that he is not bound by any moral constraints. Right? He's totally willing to ally himself with anyone, including the fellow wealthy kid who's the gay guy who's the drug dealer. Mm-hmm. And so he allies with that guy in order to get him to compromise
Reese Witherspoon's best friend.
Yeah, who without hesitation just jumped right into the intrigue of it all and got someone compromised, right?
Exactly, and so he knew that if he was going to go for his target here, Reese Witherspoon, right, to try to win this wager, what he's going to have to do is know the profile of Reese Witherspoon and have access to her circles, right, her circles of intimates, her close friends, and he's got to try to manipulate and influence them in this indirect approach before he does this direct approach. Now, he does bump into her and he kind of arranges this fake meet cute, right, with Reese Witherspoon, which is all kind of fake. And he plays up this character of like this really, kind of sassy, badass kind of dude, but also kind of nice. But he negs her, he does the neg.
Oh, yeah.
Remember? And
He's
it works.
got all these techniques to put her defenses down.
So he negs her and it works and it throws her off balance and she's immediately intrigued. And he's smart about it because he doesn't immediately like try to go for, everything. He's like, he doesn't try, come over to my house tonight, let's party and, let's have fun. No, he does a slow game. He plays it right. And he knows that he's going to if he's going to have to get her to compromise her morals, he's going to have to find her weak point. And it takes him a while before he does that. And he starts by her outer circle of friends. And
who was writing bad letters about him to her? Do you remember that part? Somebody was warning her about him. And
yeah, I forget who that was. Yeah.
But another thing is she called him on his tactics every time.
Right, but she still fell
for him.
And so there was this sort of known game that if he owned up to things, right? So he didn't try to play himself off as some saint. In fact, he played up the mystique of the bad boy, right? Because he has the reputation. In fact, he loves his reputation. That's one of his great. Assets is this notorious, and that way we'll see that comes into play in a very powerful way in Easy A, right?
At the end, the Catherine character is threatening his reputation, so that factors into his decision of what he did at the end.
Right. So remember, for this situation, reputation, public perception is key. This is a big part of this film. That's why it's relevant to what we're talking about and what we're studying. So his infamy is his role. It's his character. He wants to maintain that notorious reputation of being a bad boy, a playboy, a player. And so he's already got a trump card with Reese Witherspoon, right? Because she's, committed to chastity. She's written this famous essay that's her,
She was in a magazine.
Yeah, her famous essay committing to teens to chastity and this kind of stuff. And so he says, the first thing he does, which is an interesting play, is that he says, he tries to frame her as goody-goody and not having any fun. And he does the typical kind of, he negs her and then he's like, by the way, do you actually like guys? Right. So he tries to play like, oh, are you heterosexual or what's going on? And that puts her on the defensive. Right. And so he's reading this and trying to gauge whether it's working, and it's working very well. Right. Because she's very simple in the sense of honest and sincere, not simple in the sense of stupid, but she's not used to extremely manipulative people. She's
psychological manipulation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he and his sister obviously are masters at it.
Right.
Right. I mean, they're like PhDs in this, and they're only like 20, and they're like
pickup artist level, like mystery with all of.
They're beyond that. Yeah. I mean, they're like way ahead of their times, right?
Yeah.
And remember, if you don't know, by the way, a raven or a swallow is a sex operative. And so he kind of functions in that capacity, even though we're never told that they're not CIA operatives, right? But it's applicable because they're learning. That's the point. They've mastered the art of human compromise, and that's precisely what so-called intelligence operations oftentimes are. It's really just human compromise. So it's not this whole James Bond thriller stuff. It's more like what you have heard about with local police and confidential informants. That's the real, world that's going on here with these kinds of operations. It's very nasty, very dirty, and it's the art of human compromise. Okay, it's nothing to do really, for our vantage point, right, with
sneaking into a facility and stealing a microchip to save the world from a nuke, right? I mean, that every spy movie is like, the spy's the hero because he saves the Russians from getting the codes to the nuke on the microchip or some bullshit, right? No, really what a lot of this world is like a bigger international version of police and confidential informants. And that's not very glamorous, right? It's pretty nasty, and it's like, people tricking other people, you see. And that's all this whole movie is about, that, or this whole film is about this. And
but it's also sex games.
That's compromise. That's human compromise.
It revolves around that, and
this is why knowing a person's predilections and proclivities gives you an advantage on compromising that person. I mean, that's kind of obvious, right? But I mean, in this film and in the next film, that's a big part of the narrative, is the different characters and the different manipulators profiling and figuring out the weak points in their opponent and their target, where the buttons can be pushed, what upsets them, what's their trauma point, their trigger point, right? And what their fantasies are, right? Because knowing someone's fantasy is a powerful thing. That's a powerful piece of information over that person. Because if you are a very powerful person, you can conceivably concoct the fantasy and thus entrap the person, right?
Well, 2 times he used pictures as a black
Oh,
woman.
that's right. So the Ryan Felipe character is so adept at this that he's already doing the photographic compromising, right? Because he did that with the therapist's daughter, and then he does the same operation with Cecily, where he compromises her, and she's young and naive. She doesn't think about the world being this complex. And in fact, she's eventually confronted, right, by the Catherine character about how the world really works. And she's like, so you mean like it's like a secret society or whatever, and people just do it?
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, yeah, sure, you could call it a secret society, but yes, people do it. So she's just this naive, manipulated tool. But keep in mind, both the Sebastian character, Ryan Felipe, and Sarah Michelle Gellar, they use surveillance, right? They use illegal technology to get into intelligence on the people that they're surveilling, they're watching, right? I mean, they're very adept, they're very nefarious. They don't even have any qualms about, getting that kind of information to get what they want.
And it really kills the Catherine character that she keeps losing men to the more innocent girl with Reese Witherspoon and Ryan Phillippe. She lost that, and she lost with the cello instructor and her ex.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So she's so smart, but she can't hold on to what she wants, and she keeps losing it to the innocent girl.
Well, with her, she's the character that's completely malicious, and so the title of the film, Cruel Intentions, I think you were right. You pointed this out. That's really about the Sarah Michelle Gellar character. I mean, she's the one that's completely malicious, completely manipulative. She kind of, you think, right, ends up being the great game master, the God game player, because she does kind of ultimately manipulate Ryan Felipe too. She beats him, so to speak, because he's pretty much ruined.
And her prize wasn't even the winning. Her prize was letting him know that he is her plaything.
Right.
Right.
So her motivations are completely narcissistic and just the game itself. She's not even. I mean, she's a pleasure focused person, but the pleasure that she finds is in her own victory. I mean, even the sexuality that she uses is just a tool, and it's like a secondary thing. She's not even that interested in it, which is bizarre, because that means that she's basically completely psychopathic, right? She's the most narcissistic psychopathic character in either film, and she's on this she's motivated by this revenge quest because it turns out, right, that she's, as you said, been butthurt, and that's what she can't stand. Her ego is so fragile that she has to then ruin
everyone else, even to the point of the people that she supposedly loves, which of course she doesn't love anybody. She's incapable of love.
She didn't even want him to love her.
Right. Yeah, that was her point, was that if I don't win, everyone will lose.
Yeah.
Right. I'll destroy everyone.
Yeah.
So, as we said, we notice her using surveillance, gaining illegal intelligence, right? She has no qualms about doing that. Then we find her doing the very interesting leak scenario, right? So, she finds out about the fact that Cecily might not be falling into her plan. So she arranges this whole scenario to destroy Cecily's budding relationship with her music instructor. And so she gets a hold of these letters, right? Love letters that have been written via her operative, the Vietnamese house cleaning lady, right? So she sends her operative in to get these love letters, and now she's got the dirt, and she leaks these to the mom, right? The mom of Cecily, which is a pretty profound instance of leaking, right? So here we have a targeted leak, and of course the Sarah Michelle Gellar character's playing it off like she's leaking it for Cecily's own good. She doesn't want her to get hurt. She wants her to have a great experience at prep school, and it's none of that, right? It's only to play into her bigger game.
That's interesting, because this is the real prep school for their kind of life in power and espionage. These games are the prep, not the actual prep school.
Yeah, I think we're kind of getting the impression that, that the Sarah Michelle Gellar character would be a good operative in intelligence. Like, she would be good for some role of running, a compromise operation. Or right? Even she would be a Ghislaine Maxwell.
A big CEO that could
a psychopathic CEO, exactly, right. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, they're kind of moving up this structure, and that's why they're tasked with mentoring the younger people, right? Mentoring a Cecily or this kind of person. And if you remember, when Cecily first comes to the school, the mom is like, oh, you've got to be under Catherine. She's the most popular, most respected, best student here. The president of the student council. And it's all fake, right? She's the most wicked, manipulative person. So she'll be perfect for government. She'll be perfect for government operative service. I mean, that's a great point, babe. Let's see. Next point. So we saw the intelligence, So again, we see compromise keeps coming up, getting the dirt on the other person, and then targeting those leaks when they're necessary, right? Holding that over people. What is that? I can't even read my notes anymore.
Showing vulnerability. Oh, to reform his image. Oh, Ryan Phillippe had like the puppy dog game face, like, I'm a bad boy.
Yeah, he does a good job of gauging her perception of him.
Yeah.
And so when he starts noticing that Reese Witherspoon might think he's a little too wild, then he presents to her in a very clever way his vulnerable side, right? Mm-hmm. His sensitive side. And he arranges this whole goofy scenario where they spend the day together at the old folks' home. Right? And he doesn't want to do it. He can't stand it. But it's all for this bigger game. And he plays it well. He plays it off like he really had a fun time. And she's, prodding him. Did you really have fun with that old woman? And turns out this is the point where he's starting to weaken. And so this is where the narrative flips. And we actually realize that he's starting to actually like Reese Witherspoon, right? We didn't think he would. We thought he was just going to be a nefarious character, but he's starting to like her. And now we're thinking maybe Reese Witherspoon is a little more intelligent. She's a little more savvy than we thought. Maybe she's a smarter character than she initially came off as, just this overly naive kind of goober character. Mm-hmm. Because she was a goody-goody, right?
But he still played her to get her to give in to him the first time when he was like, I guess I'll just leave. Because
he keeps reframing her perception of him, right? He'll alternate between this hot and cold. He'll go back and forth between a little too sensitive and a little too sassy, right? Yeah. Back and forth. And it works perfect with her, right? So he does win her over, but then he doesn't realize that he's getting gained because he's actually liking her. And she becomes his weak point.
Yeah.
And the Catherine character realizes that that's now his weak point.
Yes.
So this is the thing, right? With and when it comes to compromise operations, weak points are always like people's family and loved ones, right? That's why really nasty people, operatives, agents, mob, etc., they'll go after family members because that's someone's weak point. Let's see. Sebastian manipulates the therapist by learning the psychological operations. Uses the he does the Tony Soprano move. We saw that. So we see that again. The PEDO point comes up. That was a good point you made. Let's see. I want to make sure I didn't leave out any of the notes.
They even had a kiss. Just like Madonna and Britney kiss, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The sexuality element is totally a tool. I mean, there is some pleasure, right, on the part of the characters. They do find pleasure in it, but it has nothing to do with love and procreation and family, right? For the vantage point of the people in these operations, it's purely and 100% a tool.
I just thought of another disturbing scene.
What?
When the Selma Blair character goes to Sarah Michelle Gellar and says, "Your brother took advantage of me last night," and she makes her describe what happened and convinces her that was actually a good thing and you want to do this more. Yeah,
she tells her, "Look, honey, sleep with as many people as possible."
And you'll be in the secret society.
Yeah, she's like, and you'll be in the society of the adults or whatever, right? So they're actively corrupting her, and her motivation for corrupting her is to simply get back at the guy who left her, who's now dating and interested in her. So we notice that the attitude here by the manipulative sort of upper class elite is completely cynical. It's completely seeing people as just tools, as pawns, and then they're basically no longer useful or relevant after they've served their purpose. What was this?
He went full bluff nuke mode and it worked.
Well, this is when he gets sort of cornered, right? Because once he starts liking her, and he knows it too. He knows that when he starts liking Reese Witherspoon, he's exposing himself to weakness to his sister.
Becoming human and learning.
And the sister immediately sees it and immediately plays it.
Yeah.
Right away. Yeah. And she's like, "All right, you're done. I've won. I'm going to destroy you."
Yeah.
And so she kind of does, but the only move he has left, as we find out, is this journal, this diary that he's been writing, telling the whole story, right? So all along, all of his conquests, all of these nefarious deeds with his sister, he's had in this secret diary that she's forever wanted to get a hold of. And so he kind of holds the ultimate nuclear, right, blackmail operation, which is this diary. But Catherine...
It's so high school, it's funny.
But see, Catherine doesn't... She thinks that he's like her and that he would never leak that because it would destroy him.
Right.
And so she bluffs.
She's banking on him.
She banks on him not leaking the information and admitting to a self-destruct mode. But the whole point is that because he actually loves Reese Witherspoon, he's willing to nuke himself, right? For the chance and possibility of getting her back. And it will destroy the sister as well. And a bizarre occurrence occurs, right? Which we don't expect, which is the car wreck, right? So we're thrown for a loop with this car wreck, this kind of, right? Because, and I appreciate this in the story because it really wouldn't work with a story where the main characters are able to manipulate every single scenario. I mean, that's not the real world, right? I mean, the real world is not a situation where anybody, whether you're an operative or people in the world or business CEO, nobody can control every event, right?
That's a good point.
There had to be an outside of the manipulation event that kind of throws, some chance into the scenario to give the characters a unique way to react to that. And so the car wreck occurs when we realize that Ryan Felipe really does. I mean, we already realized he loved her because he was willing to nuke everything to get her back, to leak everything and destroy all. And this is remember at the beginning of the film, their reputations are everything. So now they've had to admit that he's had to say, well, all right, I'm willing to destroy it all because I've been ruined. I'd rather have her, right, and not have this notorious reputation and all this sort of power, this perceived power, but on the part of the student body and the New York wealthy youth elites or whatever.
Nothing can get your girl back like a diary of your past conquests. Like,
well, but it's not just that, because it's a diary that exposes their manipulation, right? So it's like a WikiLeaks, right? He does like a little WikiLeaks. He WikiLeaks himself, yeah, exactly, and kind of goes after his own operation.
Their love story was pretty cheesy.
It was pretty cheesy, yeah. I mean, he reminded me a lot of like Hayden Christensen in the in the prequels.
I don't like sand. It's very coarse. It gets in everything.
Right.
He's so pouty, like.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely got some cheese to it. Although I have to admit, that final scene when they do have the diary leaked is a pretty well done scene, right? Mm-hmm. You've got Bittersweet Symphony playing, and then you see the complete downfall and collapse of Catherine, which was filmed. It was very well filmed.
Fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of '90s nostalgia if you want to go back to the '90s. But was that everything about? Let's see. There was something else about Catherine. Catherine decides to use the dirt. She tries to destroy the reputation of Sebastian. And so there's a bluff game that comes into this, which is interesting because you don't know which characters are willing to go how far, right? And so they're constantly kind of trying to analyze and call the other person's bluff. Sebastian does this to try to win over Reese. Remember when he calls her bluff, when he's like, well, I guess I'll just assume that you don't believe in true love, right? You claim to believe in, you claim to love God, but isn't God love? And you find true love, and you're turning your back on it. So, and he turns his back on her.
Yeah, and she's like, no, wait.
That was a huge gambit, right? It was a big. He risked it all, but it was a big gambit to see, and it worked. And so he knew he had her at that point.
That was really dumb.
But it was a smart play from his perspective.
Oh yeah,
right. He played it right.
I just can't believe she fell for that.
And then of course she eventually does give in, and they do fall in love. And she becomes his redemption, right? So the Sebastian character, interestingly, finds redemption, right? He does have a change of heart, and in the story, it's symbolized by his self-giving sacrifice. He dies to save Reese Witherspoon, right? And then with Catherine, there's no redemption because Catherine, as we said, is completely malicious.
No, she gets her just
comeuppance. She gets her comeuppance,
yeah.
right? Let's see. So Catherine calls his bluff. She threatens to go to ruin all the reputations. This doesn't work. Sebastian. And so we find out that in the end, it's actually Reese Witherspoon that wins out. And because she just simply remains faithful to her principles for the most part. I mean, she's not a flawless character because she actually does violate her principles when she sleeps with Sebastian. But they do genuinely like each other, right? So we kind of forgive her for her character flaw because she is sincere in loving Sebastian, and Sebastian does genuinely care for her. And so they're willing to lose it all for this, and that's how those characters find redemption. And really, Catherine is completely destroyed, right? So the truth eventually comes out at the funeral. Everything ends up, I mean, Reese ends up winning, but at a cost, right? Because Sebastian's dead, right? So the point here is that the God game didn't achieve anything except that the one character that believed in God, right, ended up kind of in the end winning, so to speak, but at great cost, and by not playing this manipulative, deceptive, cynical God game.
Yeah.
That's what separates her from Catherine, is that the character contrast between Catherine and Reese Witherspoon is that Reese Witherspoon is virtuous and good. She's not without flaw, but she is good. She is virtuous, and she's not cynical.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and she gets the car at the end, which Catherine.
Well, that was the wager, right? Yeah. That was the thing that Catherine wanted. Yeah. So kind of the point here, I guess. Let's see. In summation, is that there's a final attempt at manipulation that we passed over with Catherine trying to manipulate the music teacher Ronald. But then this doesn't work because Cecily finds out that when the diary gets out, everybody finds out that Catherine was kind of this mastermind. And so you get this nuclear option, the master psyop, and then Bittersweet Symphony. I think it's a great, I mean, it's cheesy in the 90s way, but it's a great cautionary tale, and it shows us a kind of window into the way the world works with these principles, right? We have intelligence, counterintelligence, we have the game being played, we have evil actors, we have manipulation, we have the ability to anticipate, right, how the other person is going to play against you, how you're going to play if they do this or that, and it's all illustrated very well in this film. What do you think?
Yeah, if you like a case study of a psychopath or a narcissist, I think this is a good. It
is. I mean, a lot of people. I know everybody's probably seen the million YouTube videos about narcissists and psychopaths, but Catherine is definitely that character, and then we do see the potential for change too, right? The potential to have a nefarious character turning into a good character.
Yeah, definitely not one for kids or for.
Welcome, everybody. By the way, be sure to hit like and share, and we will get to some of those super chats in a moment. If you're interested, by the way, in a couple books, there are some books that are kind of relevant to this. If you watch the Rockfin stream, I went through many books that dealt with straight up intelligence analysis and spy biographies, espionage, and that kind of stuff. But for maybe a more practical minded person, maybe you're not that interested in that field, but what if you're involved in business, right? How would this play into business? Well, isn't it obvious, right? I mean, your opponent, your competition in business, if you're in any kind of field where you're having to interact or compete, these kinds of things play into it, right? The basic principles of, the art of war, right? I'm not going to do the cliche ones, but if you've not heard of this book, it actually is a good book, and it's relevant to what we're talking about, the Robert Greene book on power, right? You've probably seen it in all the Barnes and Nobles. It's a very, very well-known, very famous book. And there's another book, too, that's relevant maybe to business or to anything that deals with strategy. It's called Thinking Strategically, which I've enjoyed. So there's a lot of different books that do touch on what we're dealing with, but those are more practical, right? Maybe you're not that interested in intelligence analysis or that kind of stuff, but if you're interested in the more practical approach, I would recommend those books. All right, what's next?
Easy A, which is an interesting choice. You don't really think of serious manipulation and deception things it's just kind of a fun movie, like a teen comedy.
Well, sometimes teen comedies and high school is actually a great microcosm for this kind of stuff, because high school is kind of like a weird world that has all of the cliques, the interactions, the deception, the perception.
The
hierarchies, yeah. The popularity, the gossip, the image, all of what will always be in the rest of life, right? I mean, it's like it doesn't go away once high school ends, right? I mean, things, your priorities change, right? Obviously, but
tabloids, and those are just kind of like the popular kids of the world.
Well, we'll see, right? We'll see with Olive's character that it's kind of like a pop star, and so her perceived inadequacies as a character is that because she's very intelligent, which the film lets us know early on, she doesn't fit in, right? And this movie does appeal, quite often to 80s movies, right? It's in the train of John Hughes. It's an homage to John Hughes, even though it's not a John Hughes movie, obviously. But there's a lot of references to Say Anything, to I know that's not John Hughes, that's Cameron Crowe, but there's references to Can't Buy Me Love, Ferris Bueller,
say anything.
Yeah, multiple John Hughes movies. So that's always going to involve, right, most of the time, the outcast high school character, right? The person who's got all these good budding qualities, but they're inhibited. They're held back, and most of the time they're held back by their own like mental prison, right? So that's the character, development that they have to go through to flourish, right? The transformation. And obviously, yes, this is playing on Nathaniel Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter. So those are kind of obvious, and it's made obvious. It comes up in the film. But I've been reflecting and thinking a lot about high school and just how interesting it was as a microcosm and as a kind of you could do a whole book on high school, just the fascinating it's a weird time in your life, obviously, when you're not really an adult yet, but you're almost an adult, but you're still a kid. So you can get away with a lot. You're super naive, but you're starting to figure out that not everything in the world is the way you thought it was as a kid, right?
But everything is so important. It feels like
everything is super important, and you think that like anybody who makes fun of you, any of the gossip that gets out, right? You think it's going to destroy you. If something embarrassing,
you're missed. If you get grounded and you miss one party, you're dead.
It's the end of the world. Everything's the end of the world in high school, right? And that's all going to come up in this film, and Olive is a likable character.
And
she's a related, right?
Reputation is key. And how
right, reputation and perception are everything in high school, right? Because remember, it's a time when, we've already noticed the natural hierarchies prior to high school, right? If you played sports, you already knew there was a hierarchy. If from the earliest ages, kids when they're playing, you'll notice the hierarchical structures will develop where, the alpha kid on the playground is obviously the alpha kid, and there's a bully or whatever. That's just part of nature. That's obvious. But it's magnified in high school to where you're introduced to the clique. And you might have had cliques in junior high, but it's getting more and more pronounced. And the social strata that forms, which is just a fact. Okay, there's never going to be
archetypes for a reason.
Yeah, there's never going to be a perfect egalitarian world. And no matter how many 80s, dreamy high school movies portray this picturesque ideal world where there's no cliques and no hierarchies, is just never going to happen, even though it is still, I think, fun and interesting to enjoy those movies. Here we have a different approach where we're not critiquing society per se. I think maybe there might be a kind of a SJW message in this movie about the perception of Hester Prynne in the novel and the perception of Olive, but we're not interested in that moral critique of the film. That's boring. There's a million people who can do some more. What we want to look at is the way that Olive is enticed by the power that she starts to notice. Her weird way of reconciling with the cliques and the drama and the gossip of high school. And again, of course, how it will relate to the things that we're talking about in terms of intelligence narratives. I'm going to have to plug the computer in. It's going to die. Go ahead.
Well, it's interesting that she realizes that it's better to have a bad reputation than to have no reputation at all. And to be a nobody in high school is the worst thing that you could be, right? So if you haven't seen the movie, the plot is that a girl agrees to help out young boys with their reputation by saying that she slept with them, right? And it's not real.
Or got the second base, right?
Yeah, or whatever they could afford to pay her for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so it starts with her lamenting the fact that she doesn't fit in, right? That she's not popular. She's got one friend, and she doesn't like her friend. Her friend's annoying. She thinks her friend's really weird. She's got a new age California family, right?
Yeah.
And so she gives this story about how, and she's kind of just joking initially. She's like, yeah, we did it, and it was, it was really wild and crazy. And she exaggerates. She makes up this crazy story, which again, she's initially just kind of playing around and joking with. And she kind of thinks it's funny that her friend is kind of so gullible to believe this obviously made up story, right? And so she's tempted with the power that she sees in the gullibility of people, right? And so she starts thinking and realizing that she can manipulate people. She can be a very manipulative person because she is highly intelligent, right? And this is, again, you can obviously see why this relates to what we're covering in terms of counterintelligence, but it made me think too when we were talking about my high school experience. You were at, because Jamie didn't go to you did what, homeschooled?
Yeah, I was homeschooled.
And you never went to any high school. Okay, so she didn't know the high school experience. She did a little bit of community college, but she didn't have the 4 years of the archetypal high school experience. And
I don't know if I'm popular or not.
Well, it's funny because we were looking through my yearbook, and she was asking, "What about this person? What about this person?" Oh, it's like, "Oh, that was a nerd. Oh, that was a popular kid." Well, what were you, right? And I was like, "Well, I was kind of in this weird group of people who partied, but I also for a little while played sports. So I was in a weird kind of multiple worlds thing there, multiple cliques, but I was not a jock, right? So I was typically classed with, the sort of wild, rebellious, artsy party kids. So I was in the alternative, cool kids group. And, so I had a kind of a bad rep for the circles that I hung out with, but I realized that was actually pretty good for getting girls, right? So if you're nerdy, but, you're not going to get girls, right? The only people that get girls are jocks or, guys with bad reputations that hang out with bad people. They're wild kids, right? The wild guys, right? And that's just a feature of this microcosm world, right? Where you start to figure this out.
Win class clown or something?
Yes, I was class clown. My superlative was wittiest.
Nice.
So I did win that award. I'll show you guys that here in a minute if you don't believe me.
Oh, but the thing that struck me when you were showing me your yearbook was that
this was
you
the thing
remembered people as somebodies and nobodies.
Now, and I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying that was the attitude.
Yeah. Because
you're in a world where you've figured out the rigid hierarchies that have just developed. And by the way, I was watching a boomer guy's he calls himself that, like a boomer documentarian guy. And he was pointing out the attitudes of a very small town in the 60s. I'll see if I can dig that up and I'll put it in the show description. It's relevant to what we're talking about because, it's just some random small town in the 1960s that wasn't affected by the 60s countercultural revolution was the point of this documentary. And they had all of the same things, right? Who were the popular kids, or in this documentary, they were called the soc, right? The socials. You're a social or a popular kid if your parents were rich or prominent. That's it. If your parents were part of the country club, then you probably had an in. You were in. That was it. The only other way to be popular, if you weren't in the prominent rich families, is to be really good at sports. That's it. So you could be popular. You could get into the hierarchy, but you've got to be exceptional at something, right? You've got to be really good at football, basketball. Maybe you're some kind of musical virtuoso, right? And you lead the band. You might have a little bit of popularity, even though band is really nerdy, right? I mean, band is right above swing choir.
We're theater kids.
Yeah, so theater is interesting because what's weird about theater, and I was in theater. You could have the people in theater were either nerdy and unpopular, or they partied and were wild. And then theater people actually later went on in life to be way more successful, typically, than the people, I'm not joking, I'm thinking of my high school, than the people who were the jocks. The jocks, they just stay around and they run a local, they become high school teachers. Because they never leave the attitude and mindset of high school. They're like Uncle Rico.
That was glory days. Man.
Yeah, that's the glory. It's Uncle Rico if you watch Napoleon Dynamite. I could throw a football over that mountain. If I bet I could throw a football over that mountain, right?
Yeah.
So they end up, running a tombstone store, right? Or a dentist or you know, I mean, I guess a dentist is a decent profession. I'm just saying, I'm not knocking these people. I'm saying that typically though, the people, yeah, exactly. The jocks peaked in high school, and now they're accountants. Okay, so, and they never left their hometown, right? And that's pretty standard analysis, right?
Someone said class of 99. What were you?
97.
I would have been 99 had I gone.
Okay. Well, you said you played music, so you probably would have been in like the wholesome band type, and so you wouldn't have hung out with me. You would have been like, oh, he's he's too wild. I don't hang out with those party people.
Definitely. There is a clique in this movie, Easy A, and that plays a big part. It's the Christians. So it's the Christian girl who leaks the false rumor that the Emma Stone character.
Here's me as the superlative, if you don't believe me. Here's me pulling an Uncle Rico, playing, right, living up my glory days there. Not there. I'm not the black dude. Right there. Wittiest. There you go. See, proved it.
Nice.
So
I probably would have been with the little Christian circle.
There were people who were like very into their Baptist church who were in music class or choir, and that would have been you, and you wouldn't have hung out with me. You would have been like, oh no, he's the bad guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Bad boy.
Yes, exactly. Bad boy. What you gonna do?
Well, this is one of my least favorite tropes just because it hits home and it's a little too it's over the top, but the whole Christian teenage bitch, the girl who is just too perfectionist because of her faith. Like, remember that movie Saved?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the portrayal of the Christians in this movie because they act like exactly how goober evangelicals act. So it doesn't bother me. I mean, that's literally how these people will act. And I remember in high school, that's how they were perceived. And so this is true. And I'm not trying to say that everybody who's evangelical is bad or nefarious. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying that sort of the garish, egregious sort of public displays of, oh, everyone should watch as we do praise and worship here in the quad. Yeah. Everybody watch. I mean, it was just so over the top and gooey, and it just comes off so inauthentic. I think that's what really annoys people about this attitude and this caricature, which is true. It's a true caricature. And the role that they play is just kind of similar to the role of the religious people in Hawthorne's, Scarlet Letter. But what's ironic, I think, is the point is that Hester in the novel, right, she becomes much more saintly after all of this trouble that she goes through than the sort of self-righteous people in the city, who many of them have similar or worse sins, right? And I think that aspect of the hypocrisy is something that, that doesn't bother me. I don't see a problem with that. And most of the time, people are annoyed by evangelical hypocrisy. I think most people find that annoying. Anyway, so let's get back to Olive. Go ahead.
That's a meme in the whole movie. Is everyone hates this girl, the
Amanda
the
Bynes.
most outspoken Christian girl is the most hated person in the movie.
The Amanda Bynes character.
Yes.
Yeah. So she's vlogging her life. The diary comes up. Diaries always come up in high school. It's definitely a high school thing, having a diary.
Oh,
imagine.
Had the diary.
I was gonna say. I mean, imagine. Imagine thinking that your high school thoughts are that important. That's your mindset in high school, right? You're like, I'm so deep. I better record every thought I have because this generations are gonna be reading my diary because I'm fucking deep, bro.
I think I kept a diary maybe for like a little bit, and then my mom found it and read it and was like, what the heck? And I never learned, don't write down your thoughts because...
Well, this is what's interesting. So, this reminds me of what's interesting about Olive's character is that she's outcast. She says at the beginning, I was nobody, right? I'm just an average kid. And I wanted to know, what is it like to be a somebody? And this is what is in every high school teen movie, and it's what every high schooler deals with.
That's Can't Buy Me Love is about that.
Well,
right?
but I'm saying you really do confront this in high school.
Oh.
Because you're confronted with the social hierarchy, and then you think, well, dang, what must it be like to be the cheerleading squad head? What must it be like to be the captain of the football team? What must it be like to be at the top of the totem pole? Mm-hmm. I want to be a somebody. And so then people start figuring out, trying to become somebody. And what Olive notices is when she makes up this story about her, losing her V card, which is all fake. It's just a silly. She realizes that, wait a minute, my friend is that dumb that she believes this ridiculous story. Mm-hmm. And then it immediately spreads around the whole campus, right? Mm-hmm. And she's suddenly like the most talked about person on campus. Like, she's popular. Mm-hmm. And so at first she's a little thrown by this, a little scared of it, but she's tempted by it. And she starts to play with this idea of, maybe I can go with this. Maybe I can run with this, right? And so she starts experimenting with more and more deception. She's being tempted. She's buying into it. She's gradually getting a little more, and she starts to think, maybe I can use this to be a somebody, right? And that's her temptation. She's going to learn an important lesson throughout this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And she's realizing that, like, because she's just read the novel, right? So she's read Scarlet Letter, and she realizes that, well, if there's no bad press, if it's better to be infamous than a nobody, then, like, all I have to do is keep playing this up, right?
That's a very narcissistic trait. Not that this character is narcissistic.
Well, she's tempted with this, yeah.
But no kind of attention is bad for a narcissistic
all
person.
Publicity is good publicity, yeah. And her friend that's actually jealous of her, right? Is legitimately her friend, but is actually jealous of her. The blonde chick, she's like, well, you're not actually popular. You're just infamous. Mm-hmm. And then, at the worst point of Olive's character development, she's like, well, yeah, it's better than being a nobody.
Well,
right?
Another contrast is all the boys that pay her to help their reputation. Mm-hmm. But it destroys her reputation, but it helps them. So it's this whole idea is that...
Well, she's learning that everyone has a facade.
Yeah.
Right? And that's one of the things that you learn in high... What is every freaking high schooler? You're all so fake. Everybody's so fake. Right? That's the thing that you care about the most in high school, right? It's like, fake. Everybody's freaking fake with me, dude. Right? And you're on this whole angst thing of like... I'm gonna find the real me, right? When in reality, like, dude, grow up. Like, you're just a teenager. Everybody thinks that they're the real, true, authentic artist, and everybody else is fake. I mean, it's just, And it's funny when you get older and you look back and you're like, oh man, cringe, dude. Why did I think I was so, deep? I was so authentic in high school. But that's just part of high school.
And it gets worse in college. Then you get on causes.
Then you join your social justice causes, yeah. But so she's growing more and more fascinated with the power of the sex leak scandal, right? Mm-hmm. And so she runs with it. She's like, hey, what the heck?
She leans full into it and puts the A on her clothes.
Exactly.
And starts dressing the part.
She used it as a... Now, wait a minute. I'm not going to do like Hester Prynne where, she had to wear this symbol as a sign of her punishment for, however many years Hester had to wear it in the novel. But she's like, I'm going to use it as a logo. She brands herself as this. And so it's, in this sense, it's a better commentary on how modernity has transformed this attitude, right? She markets it. And she even makes comments about consumerism and how the sort of rampant neoliberal capitalism works, where it's like, I mean, in other words, Olive is almost grappling with that, saying, like, why don't I just be the way that this society works? This society works on promoting and selling this stuff. It's a pop culture society. It's a consumerist society. Makes perfect sense to, like, market myself as the easy A. Mm-hmm. And you made a great point that I didn't even realize it's playing on the word easy lay, right? everybody, oh, she's an easy lay, right? She's a slut, whatever. So, well, she's easy A because it's the A of Hester Prynne, and it's the A that she's getting easily because she's really intelligent.
Yeah.
She's way more intelligent than everyone around her. And so, again, she realizes that it's better to be notorious and infamous than nobody. The class keeps talking about the individual's relationship to society, and she starts to realize that she can affect the entire school. And so she actually becomes this kind of individual, like, intelligence operation where she learns everybody's secrets. Mm-hmm. And she didn't even plan this, but like all of the guys in high school, all the nerdy guys, they're coming to her, they're like, hey, well, I'll give you a $50 gift card if you say that I got to second base, right? And she's like, okay, whatever, yeah, sure. And so she's cashing in on this, and it looks like everything's going great, but as we all know, like, there's got to be, right, a downfall. There's got to be a danger where the character starts to realize that this is going to spin out of control, right? So, something's off here. This can't keep going. She even like adopts the slut ethos, right? She's like, oh yes, I'm the slut. I am the school slut. I'm gonna adopt it. I'm gonna wear it. I'm gonna dress it. I'm gonna live it. She loses her one friend, but she is worried about her family and people that she cares about, and she keeps warning them and kind of saying, look, if you guys hear bad things about me, it's not true. If this happens, it's not. If you hear that I did this, it's actually not true. If you hear that I have an STD, it's not true, right?
So, an interesting thing about this is that she starts to get used, and she
doesn't like being used.
She gets used by the adults even.
Yeah.
And now she's the scapegoat because it's easy to pin everything.
Easy.
Yeah, to
exactly.
pin things on her, and so that goes back to Old Testament scapegoats and.
Right. But I'm thinking more in terms of like we could apply this to the way this applies with pop stars, right? I mean, the image of the pop star is a media creation. Mm-hmm. It's fake. Okay, it's not real. The stories, the drama that comes out about the pop stars to get everyone to talk about them, it's fake. Not every time. I mean, yes, some of these people are damaged, they're on drugs or whatever.
Well, it's proven that even whole relationships are fake. And
yeah, they'll arrange fake relationships just to be in the tabloids. Tabloid stories will come out right before a movie, right before an album that's going to be promoted. I think everybody's kind of figured this out now. But back in the days in the 80s and the 90s, people didn't know this. People didn't think that this is what goes on.
Assume anything now about anybody knowing things.
Okay, maybe not, but. So even though she's up to this point really enjoyed the game, now she's starting to question the game. She's starting to realize that it has negative effects, and maybe she doesn't want to play it. Maybe she can't always win this game. And again, referring here to the God game. There's another interesting element that this movie is dealing with in terms of words and the power of words. This keeps coming up with the word twat, with the word, with the letter A, with the novel, with the way societies tell stories and how words are empowered or de-empowered based on societal perceptions. I didn't really want to, that's a little more of a linguistic philosophy route, but that is an element to this film that I didn't notice until this time I watched it. But I do like the part that she does get to where she actually enjoys the disinformation getting out, and she kind of studies the way that the information travels around the school and realizes what power she has by gaining all of this dirt on people.
Well, and the reputation like grows exponentially because of the telephone game and the gossip game.
Yes,
right?
Exactly, right.
So it doesn't even have to be that big. It can just start as a little seed and then it
yeah, just like with the Ryan Felipe character, one thing that she does is that she surrounds herself and connects herself with people who are deviants. For example, the Skittles guy that she's good friends with, right? I mean, she befriends him and she uses him, and he uses her. And so the relationships that she starts to develop are based purely on use. They're based purely on selfish purpose. And so now she actually is becoming morally compromised, right? And she will eventually have a kind of a breakdown because she realizes that, wait, maybe I'm actually maybe I am evil, right? And she has this sort of crisis at one point where she realizes that she's caused the breakup of a marriage. The woman, the adult in the relationship, was cheating, so it was an illicit situation, but she's involved in it because she ends the marriage rashly and haphazardly by leaking information. And then so she starts to realize, well, maybe it's not ethical to always leak bad information, right? Maybe sometimes information can damage people. Maybe I can hurt people by what I'm doing, even if I think it's fun, even if I think it's useful, even if I get a kick out of, duping people. And doing this kind of stuff. So I do like the fact that she has this character development, but it's funny that she played the beard to the gay guy, right? She plays the beard, and then we learn that Olive this whole time is actually a virgin, right? This is an alter ego. It's a completely fake creation, right? And she's figured this out, that it's just marketing. She just marketed herself as this. It's totally fake.
That's the only reason she can be so brazen about it, because the Lisa Kudrow character admits that if you really were a slutty girl, you wouldn't be like that outspoken about it, right?
Yeah, and it has the situation of the high school party. And by the way, I was telling Jamie,
what is that? There's always a banger in high school. Did you go to those?
Yeah,
I know,
of course. I mean, if you didn't get invited to the party, you were a nobody. I mean, that's just how the high school hierarchy works, right? You've got to be a somebody to get invited to the party. And even getting invited to the party doesn't mean that you're at the top of the totem pole. It just means you were there. You're a somebody, right? But then in the party, there's going to be, rooms that go off on their own to go, get high or whatever, do their thing. And they might be in a higher clique, right? Or the jocks might have a party that you don't get invited to, right? Maybe sometimes you get invited to the jock party. And if you do, then it gets around the high school. Oh, whoa.
So,
you got invited to the Bobby's party, right? If you got invited to that means that you might be kind of climbing up in your rank.
the kids that are throwing the parties, where are the adults? Is that an absentee adult situation?
Sometimes. Sometimes there might be even the adults allow the party, and there were even situations where parties would hire a cop to be at the party.
Oh.
And that would ensure, right, that people weren't getting... But another element to this that is overlooked is that that adults in small towns or even in big towns, they're sometimes involved in this, right? They want their kids to be the popular kid to have the party. Because if you have the party at your house, it's a pretty powerful statement, right? Not everybody can have the party to get 100, 200, 500 people there. The beer,
the pool table, and
the keg, you got to have all that, right? You can't. So you got to be somebody to even be having the party or to be on the land or whatever.
Yeah.
And so,
you said something that was interesting. You said you go to the party and you hope you do something that people will talk about the next week that happened at the party. Yeah,
that's the thing, is that one of the reasons that you want to be at the party is because, right, something crazy is going to be going on, right? Like so-and-so got shit-faced, or, did you hear about the fight between blah, 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 and blah, 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 right? So you want to be part of the story the next week at school, because the next week everybody's going to be talking about what happened at the party.
I feel like an award show is just a grown-up version of like the big house party, right? Because then everyone's talking about it. You've made the pictures, you've made the fashion and all that.
Yeah, I was in the 90s, so nobody had cameras everywhere, right? That was yet to come, but at that time it was just still stories, right? The gossip. What happened did you hear about what happened last weekend? What? So-and-so went to so-and-so's house, right? Oh, really? What did he do? He was so drunk, he got on the tractor and he rode over the other dude's truck. What? In the tractor? Yes. Nuh-uh. And then they fought, dude. Really? Yes. Right. So you want to have these kind of, you want to be in the story. Otherwise,
you're nobody.
You're nobody.
Yeah.
Also, where you sit in the lunchroom, right? Who you sit with, where you sit, right? Now, you see this in the 80s movies. That's how it really is, right? Yeah. I have to explain this to her because she didn't go to high school, right? So she was like, what? It's really yes. High school is completely clique. And everybody knows it too. That's the crazy. It's like, it's just an accepted thing. I mean, it is natural, but it's funny that like no nerdy dude goes and sits at the popular kids table. It's just you don't do that, dude. Like, I mean, you're going to get like, a wedgie. You're going to get your head dunked in the toilet after lunch if you do that.
Wow.
So no nerdy dude would do that.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And of course, also the hierarchy in high school relates to who can and can't date who. Mm-hmm. I don't care if you're like the best looking scruffy dude. If you're a skank, you're not going to date a popular chick. Doesn't matter how good looking you are. Won't happen.
Oh, like
because it's a rigid hierarchy.
Like Judd Nelson in Breakfast Club.
Judd Nelson will never date Molly Ringwald. No. Ever. Even if they're stuck in a room and they eventually kind of connect, it will never happen.
Birds of a feather, huh?
Because you don't date outside your clique.
Okay.
Very rarely would anything like that ever occur. Anyway.
So did you notice that in the beginning the mascot was the Devils, Blue Devils?
Mm-mm.
And then they changed it to the Woodchucks because the Christians made a scene about it.
No, I didn't even catch that. That's funny.
And then at the end, when she does her reveal where she pops out and does her sexy dance and just kind of embraces the entire...
Yeah, she becomes a pop star.
She becomes...
I mean, she's like a pop star, like figuring this out.
She does a burlesque, basically, for the pep rally.
For the pep rally. By the way, pep rallies are the dumbest thing of all time. I mean, and you had to go to... Like, they mandated that you go to pep rallies. I went to like one or two games.
What is the
I don't care anything about. I never cared anything about because I quit the basketball team, 9th grade.
What is the purpose of a pep rally?
So I think the purpose was they want people to come to the games because number one, money. The school gets money. Well, the school gets money for people to come. So everybody that doesn't come, that's $5 for every game that you don't go to, right?
Okay.
And then they want you to bring your parents and then concession stands. So there's a money motivation on the one hand for the school board and all that crap. Mm-hmm. I think there's a socializing aspect to why they wanted everybody to participate because it's high school is supposed to be preparing you for adult life, and so you need to participate in community activities, right? You need to vote. You need to be, supporting, whatever. So I think just the basic attitude of trying to get people involved in the social realm is why. I mean, I can't think of any other reason why you had to go to these stupid pep rallies. And they're so dumb. And they would have it would be like, sometimes they would do it first thing in the morning. Like, you come to class, you have homeroom, and then they would do this dumbass mandatory pep rally where we're going in at 9 in the morning and we're watching, cheerleaders turn flips and the basketball team and the stupid mascot run around in circles and act like retards for 20 minutes. And then it's like, then you go to classes. So I'm supposed to be hyped up because of that bullshit at 9 in the morning for 20 minutes.
They should give you an early day off to go to the game that night.
Sometimes they would.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sometimes they would do, you would get out early for a big game or something like that. So they did actually do that. But, I mean, games were stupid, dude. I can go to the game. The only time we go to the game is if we went drunk. all of us, all right, let's go. Let's all go to the game. Okay, but only if we're drunk. Right, that's it. Otherwise, I don't care anything about sports. I quit caring about sports in 9th grade. So I had no interest in, our team or whatever, what we were doing, blah, blah, blah. So
I thought that the interesting thing was at the end, to save her reputation, she had to expose herself fully on the blog, right?
Yes, she realizes that this can't continue, and so she kind of arranges her last great psyop, which is another kind of a leak, right? And because this is the beginning of internet age, right, when everybody's on the net, she's doing vlogging, right? So instead of diary, right, there's no diary in this. This is webcast vlogs. And so she tempts everyone, right, with this idea that if you tune in tonight on my basically kind of OnlyFans, she's like, you're going to get to watch me do it with one of the basketball guys or something like that.
No, the mascot, Blue Devil.
Oh, the okay.
That she
I
has
couldn't remember.
on.
Of course, that was all baloney, right? And so it was just a spectacle to get people to watch. And then she's like, well, I'm going to tell you guys what's going on, right? And then she kind of lays it all out that it's all fake. It's all made up. And guess what? That's how media works. It's the creation of spectacle, hyper reality, right? As some philosophers and documentarians and sociologists have called it. It's the creation of a hyper reality that's not real, that is just there to gain your perception, to grab your attention and to get you to focus on the spectacle. That's it. And by focusing on the spectacle, it allows the hyper reality of the screens, of the false reality, to give you a new synthetic reality, a new narrative.
She co-ops the big game, and they all tune in to her.
Yeah, that's actually, I didn't even think about that. That was genius. So she actually
took over the pep
she
rally.
took over the pep rally and the big game and made it about her.
Yeah.
Which is pretty well. And she's about to get thrown out of school, but she knows she's not going to because she's got dirt on the Lisa Kudrow guidance counselor who was cheating on her husband. So, but the moral of the story is that, right, that the words that we say, maybe this is the morale of words, right, that I was getting at earlier. Words do have power, right? Solomon says the power of life and death is in the tongue. So one mistake that a lot of people make with free speech, for example, is that I can say anything and I have a right to say anything because I can. And that's what free speech means, when actually that's not the case. In fact, your words and your speech have to be governed, right, by the divine principles that we read in Scripture, right? If we're Christian, we believe this, right? I'm not saying I do it perfectly. I need to guard my tongue more, right? But this is the lesson that she learns. She learns that her words actually do have power, and they can heal, but they can also destroy, right? And so the morale of the movie is that. But from a psychological operations perspective, I just think that it's interesting that she learned the danger of this God game, of this perception management game, and she steps away from it. She realizes that this is serious stuff. I could ruin lives with this, right? Our words can ruin lives. False information, gossip, backbiting actually can ruin people's lives. And so you should not do this unless you know that what you're saying is true, because you can hurt people's lives. Reputations are valuable.
What's that movie with Jessica Chastain where she does that for a living?
Yeah, the PR. She runs the PR firm that manages and does this kind of stuff. Yeah. That would be a good one for this series. I'm sure somebody will remember it, because I always refer to this movie and I forget the title of it. But yeah, we have to be careful with our words and how we use words and what we say. And by the way, getting something wrong about somebody is not slander. Because slander is a malicious situation where you know what you're saying is false, but you say it anyway, right? So that's, people say, oh, you slander. No. Just saying something about somebody, if it's factual, is not slander. Slander is when it's malicious and it's not true. So let's get that clear from the outset. But yeah, be careful what you say. Watch your mouth. Watch your tongue. Is there anything else about Easy A, Easy Lay? We talked about ridiculous pep rallies. We talked about...
I guess we didn't mention the part where she gets so notorious for what she's doing that the Christians form a militia against her,
they're picketing.
They're
picketing.
Yeah, they picket her.
Yeah, I think that's a commentary on how the attitude, it doesn't even make sense, right? These naive evangelicals, like these goober evangelifish people, are completely naive to what's actually going on in the school. And Olive is at least more intelligent in the sense that she understands that it's not this easy black and white thing. There's more going on, and you can't try to box life into an easy, moral black and white system. It's just more complex than that. So, but it's still, again, relevant to what we're talking about with mind games, perception management, psychological warfare, leaks, targeted leaks, compromise, surveillance. All of this stuff comes up in these movies. So, hope you enjoyed these two analyses. We got some nice fat super chats. Everybody's been very generous tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thomas G says, Jay, would you ever do an interview with Jason Lyle? Actually, I did reach out many years ago to Jason Lyle, but he didn't ever reply, or he said he wasn't able to do that. Why do people say you're a Freemason? I've not heard anybody say I'm a Freemason. I think it's pretty ridiculous. We have countless talks critiquing the worldview of Freemasonry, so that's pretty funny. I saw a guy say it on Luke Kendrat. That's probably just people trolling in the chat, like just putting in nonsense.
Because you talk about the two-headed eagle, the Byzantine.
Yeah, I mean, this is ignorance, right? The Byzantine two-headed eagle is not Freemasonic. Okay, that's an ancient Byzantine symbol. The Byzantine Empire is not Freemasonry. So the fact that Freemasons later co-opt Christian symbols, I mean, just think how dumb this is, right? Gnostics use the Gnostic cross. Rosicrucians use the cross. So is the cross Rosicrucian? No, simple fallacies. That's why we constantly deconstruct simple fallacies on this website. But again, please go learn what the Byzantine double-headed eagle is. It has nothing to do originally with Freemasonry. Freemasonry co-opts every symbol in the world, every religious symbol. So is every religion Freemasonic? This is so dumb. I'm not calling you dumb. I'm saying this objection is utterly stupid. Badger Wise, $5. I love this new approach. It's just another way of looking at films that's relevant to the stuff that I cover, that I talk about. Outstanding fresh analysis. Thank you, Rotten Tomatoes Fresh Certified. I Hard Way, $50. Thank you. Fat super chat. Hey, I'm an Orthodox Christian from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Oh man, my mouth is dry.
I'll read it.
Some water. Go ahead.
I've been listening to you, Jay, for a long time now, and I really appreciate your content. Okay, so I just want to know when y'all could maybe interview Jesse Serbator or Jonathan Pajot.
That's up to Pajot. I've asked Pajot a couple times if he'd like to do different types of discussions, and so that's up to him. I don't know who Jesse Zebator is, but that's an awesome name. John Connor, 322. A lot of teen heartthrobs were pulled out of Minnesota. Interesting. Josh Hartnett, Sean William Scott, Jessica Biel, Chris Pratt. Do they run a eugenics program in Minnesota? Winona Ryder is also from Minnesota. Interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know that. You want to read that one? Panos?
Pano Kostros, $2. Did you plan to have this?
No, we didn't.
Easy A on the day we commemorate Saint Mary of Egypt. Crazy synchronicity, lol.
We didn't, but it is totally relevant, right? Because you have the former prostitute who converts, right? And in the case of Hester Prynne, that's kind of what the novel implies. Obviously, we're not saying that Calvinists are saints, but just in terms of the narrative, that's the point of the story. But synchronicity. Thank you for that, Panos. General Nao, go ahead.
So it sounds like the best way to homeschool is to have a bunch of kids so that they'll be socialized by each other. Or is there some based Orthodox high school somewhere that I don't know about? Love y'all.
I
don't know.
I don't have any solutions to that. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I think in a lot of small towns, probably the public schools are not that bad. I mean, I don't think that like where I live, the small town, that you're going to get a lot of degenerate stuff. But I'm also, I don't know. I can't tell you that. I would say it's probably better to homeschool your kids. And most of the time, homeschool kids have meetings where they socialize with other people. So this whole myth that you're not going to socialize is ridiculous.
Yeah, I got
it's dumb. Jamie's
plenty
socialized.
of socialization I didn't feel like I missed out on. I had
I mean, you get it at the church.
Adults, I had younger friends. I did turn out weird though, so.
You are weird. In a good way.
Yeah.
Orthodox phronesis, $5. Go ahead.
This is off topic, but what's your thoughts on Orthodox dogmatic theology by Pomzanski in comparison to Orthodox dogmatic theology by Losky? Thanks.
Pomazanski's is not bad. It's just that Losky and Staniloy will bring the energies into the dogmatics in a much more central way than Pomazanski and other dogmatic writers have done. So that's why I think it's better. High Teal Horse, $5. Hi, Jay. Thank you for all your work. Do you have any advice for a friend when a friend falls to psychedelics and has devolved into the occult? Well, I mean, if the person is intent on doing that, you're probably not going to convince them with reason and logic. So I would gauge it by that. If they're not interested in hearing your arguments or your moralizations, I would just let it go and try to be a good witness and just love them. Because when they go down that route, they're probably going to start noticing moral and spiritual problems in their life on their own, and then they'll start looking for answers, and you'll be the first person that they come to.
You remember that meeting we went to where they were all ex-psychonauts converting to Orthodoxy, where they read their papers?
Yeah,
about?
the conference in
So
Texas.
Sometimes that leads people, like he just said.
Yeah, I mean, they may have to get to a point where they just have kind of a demonic experience or who knows what. You want to read the next one?
Poklonskaya. I'm a fairly recent convert to Orthodoxy, and I find
You got to read the amount.
Oh, for $10. Recent convert to Orthodoxy, I find it difficult every passing day living in California that my presence isn't wanted.
What?
I just want to move to Russia and not feel ostracized. Jay, what do you do to keep yourself from falling into depressive state?
Well, I mean, hopefully you do have a church that you can be at. But my plan is eventually to move. I don't know that I'll be moving to Russia anytime soon. I mean, maybe worst case scenario, I would try to move to another country if it got really bad. I don't know. I'm just saying that I guess it's plausible to move to another country, but I don't know that necessarily just going to another country is going to make the problems go away. I guess it just depends. I mean, I would try to leave California because I don't know if you mean. She could mean Canada, too. I don't know if she means Canada or California. It could be either one. But either one are not going to be very amenable to Christianity down the road, I don't imagine. But I would say the main thing, if you don't have friends around, the best, most important thing is to read Scripture and to pray. Those are the only antidotes to despondency or depression in those cases. There's a good book, too, called that my priest recommends by Gabriel Bungay called Despondency. So this is written by an Orthodox priest, so I would recommend that.
Okay. Thomas G, $2. Haha, yeah, I didn't think you were a Mason. I thought it was hilarious how the guy said you show the two-headed eagle because I knew it was Byzantium. The same idiot also said that the cross is a witchcraft symbol and that Jesus is Zeus. Dude is lost.
Yeah, so there you go. So the people who are saying that I'm a Freemason think Jesus is a witch or whatever. That's Zeus. It's crazy. Gen Z Philosophy, $5. I went to a small ROCOR for the first time today. I was going to go ARC before then. The ROCOR parish is based. And yes, exactly. There you go. Told you. Try to find those kinds of churches. Different stream. Hope you guys liked it. Be sure to hit like and share. We'll probably try to find some other shows or films in this kind of a genre. We will be doing, Jamie had a good idea. A couple things like what we talked about tonight. The TV show Psych. That's a great, more wholesome example of this kind of stuff than maybe the two films that we covered tonight, which are, definitely Cruel Intentions is not that wholesome, but Easy A is not that bad. It did have some skittles, but Psych is definitely a more wholesome and psychologically, philosophically relevant type of show. If you've never watched Psych, it's very entertaining, very lighthearted, but does deal a lot with what we're talking about. And then the movie Wall Street, the classic, Oliver Stone Wall Street, also very relevant for what we're talking about tonight. So we might do those next. I Hardway $1. Jesse G. Tobar was raised a witch, like in Suspiria, by Gloria Vanderbilt, the Queen of England, and the Mother of Darkness. Okay, well, I'll have to look into her. I guess it could be a dude, because there can be a man witch, but I'm assuming you're talking about a girl, but I'll have to look into her. All right, thank you guys. Everybody have a good night, and I'll come back soon with the next talk will be the next part of the Gospel of John. And then the next Serial Killers Part 2 for subscribers. Be sure to hit like and share, subscribe to Jay's Analysis. Support our sponsor, Chalk.com. I will give you the link to Chalk.com and the promo code there for our sponsor if you want to get your mojo back. You probably have lost your mojo, by the way, unless you're a regular listener to Jay's Analysis, which we know all of our guys have mojo. If you don't, if you need it, girls too, you can go to Chalk.com. There is the link. Straight up, she legit. I'm not joking. That's what's in it. She legit. Go read about it. Be sure to go to Chalk.com and use the promo code JAY. Promo code JAY. Support our